This week, Patrick joins me to discuss Fiendish, the series by artist extraordinaire and friend of the show, Irene Strychalski. Fiendish is a rather violent story in the fantasy genre, something I generally don't care for, but Irene's sharply rendered art with lush color work by Carlos Nicolas Zamudio draws me in. Also this week, I do a mini review of Safer Places by Kit Anderson, another book from our friends at Avery Hill. As always, a reminder that you can support the podcast by pledging a few bucks a month at patreon.com/deconcomics. Or if you'd rather give a one-time donation, you can do so via PayPal by sending it to mail@deconstructingcomics.com. We appreciate your support. This is Tim.
And this is Patrick.
And this is Deconstructing Comics. Welcome to Deconstructing Comics. This is Tim in Tokyo with Patrick in Kumamoto. How you doing?
I'm good. It's spring. Spring has sprung. I'm not sure when this ep will be playing, but it suddenly got super warm, and I'm not hating it. Not yet.
Yeah, we had a weird couple of months here weather-wise, at least in Tokyo. It was warm in the middle of February, and people were thinking the cherry blossoms would bloom early, and then it got completely wintry again for about 6 weeks, and the cherry blossoms actually are blooming late. But here on April 4th, as we are recording, we had a really warm day over the weekend. Now it's just getting into the 50s or 60s Fahrenheit every day, which is a lot better than 30s.
Yeah. It's like the groundhog just crawled its way out of its hellhole and decided more winter. And
we had an early spring, and then we had a winter again, and then we have a normal spring. So whatever, but
make up your mind, groundhogs.
We are here to talk about Fiendish, the first 2 volumes. That's all that's out at the time of recording. There's a 2.5 issue that's about to be released, and she's been crowdfunding all of this. It's Irene Strychalski, who, full disclosure, she's our friend. She's been on this show before. She's been on the Law of Equivalent Exchange with Patrick and me not too long ago. This is... And she's worked for Marvel before, but now she's focusing on her own comic, Fiendish, and doing story, art, and lettering. It's colored by Carlos Nicolas Zamudio, with shading assist by Duncan Burris, and special thanks to AC Zamudio. Right, so... I had not read this before. I had seen her art before, and I really thought it was beautiful.
Oh, yeah, she's amazing.
And the coloring is also really bright, really eye-catching.
It's got a lot of very, almost neon pigment, really bright and deep colors. I don't know if those two things go together, but but I do see this in a lot of recent indies comics, but a lot of times that coloring can be really muddy, and I can say right off the bat that is not the case with Fiendish. It's what the coloring doesn't it usually does a really good job of not obscuring the art.
Mm-hmm. Story-wise, it takes place in a kind of medieval-ish society. It reminded me a little bit of Berserk in the sense that kind of the setting, and also it gets pretty violent like Berserk. Although I think the quality of the violence is a little bit different, because in Berserk it's just so over the top that it's almost funny. And this didn't strike me that way. It felt, it was full on, but it wasn't as exaggerated, and it didn't feel like a humorous moment.
Right. I feel like overall, with even just a few tweaks, this could easily be a PG-13 book, but there's boobs and there's language, but other than that, I think it could easily be, it's nothing like that's gonna like totally shock you but
no, not in this day and age.
Yeah, and the gore is handled, quite well. It's like I love horror, but I'm not a gore hound, and like too much over the top gore usually like turns me off, and there's I don't have any problem.
It wasn't excessive.
No.
But the main character is this guy Casimir, who is a young man who remembers monsters wiping out his village 9 years earlier when he was just a kid. And now, 9 years later, there's been another murder that looks like the work of those same monsters, where the body is all just kind of dried out. And Casimir is traveling around with this younger guy. Where did I hide his name in my notes? Iskel. And so they're kind of trying to find these same monsters who wiped out his town, and just happened to be approached by this traveling theater company in these horse-drawn wagons, and I felt kind of bad here because I felt like Irene really put a lot into creating these characters, and then they all just get killed off. It's kind of a waste of characters. It felt like, she gave them all these personalities and backstory and design and everything, and now most of them are gone.
But what I liked, one thing I liked here, speaking of, the guy, the main, the head of the theater, he just like doesn't shut up and he keeps talking. But the lettering is like muted. So like as a reader, it's like you're given permission to ignore him.
Yes. So yeah, it communicates clearly this is not relevant to the story. You can skip this and you won't be missing anything.
There's a lot of information here if you want it, but you don't need it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a characterization moment, I guess. But yeah, it's unnecessary to actually read it. Just to kind of appreciate the fact that he doesn't stop talking. And then the monster jumps out and kills him. And most of the other characters in the theater company also die, either in the attack or later on in the beginning of the second volume. It's said that everyone has died except the one guy. And then there's this slave girl, Guillaume, who is I'm not sure how to pronounce it, Daev, D-A-E-V?
Dev or Daev, I'm not sure. But it's yeah, she kind of looks like, if you know D&D, she's like a tiefling, which is like a demon person,
She has pointy ears. And her eyes are kind of different. But this race is considered to be lesser than humans in this world, and they're just obliged to be slaves, basically.
As I was going through the first issue, like immediately I was struck by like the backgrounds just are done so well, and especially when we jump into the 9 years later. And like I really love the dreamy quality of the forest. It's almost like a cross between a little bit of a Jeff Smith thrown in there, but I would say with more non-photorealistic, like a little bit of stylistic mist, and I don't know. I really like the line quality and the colors. But
yeah, it looks so sharp. The drawing and the coloring.
I mean, backgrounds are like, I make comics, but like backgrounds are my bane always, which is, I think, most of your regular subpar comic creators. We hate backgrounds. But she's obviously really good at it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think she's setting up good interactions between the characters. Like, it comes out in issue 2. I mean, Casimir, he's seen some stuff, and he's really just so all what's the word I want? He's just kind of dead inside, I think.
Jaded. He's jaded.
Yeah, jaded. That's a good word. He says the world is cruel. The only way you can survive is to be cruel back. Where Iskal's impulse is to treat everyone kindly. He doesn't want to be cruel. So that's a good tension, I think. I'm sure that's going to affect the story going forward.
Yeah, it's a good dynamic. It's the Xena Gabrielle dynamic in a way. The world weary, experienced character versus the person who's still bright eyed and bushy tailed and has hope. Even though Iskal is treated like crap, because he's this cursed dude, and he has this horrible ability to see people's worst memories. You would think that might harden your heart a little bit, but the fact that it doesn't, that means, this character is going to be an extraordinary character,
Right, yeah, Iskal's cursed. He has a mark on his face, and most people just kind of shun him because of that. And yeah, if you touch him, then he and you will both see your worst memories.
Yeah, which people love doing. I don't know if my brain would know which one of my memories to pick, because I see them all the time when I usually as I'm waking up, I didn't want to remember that. The town is almost a character in itself. It's put up on this cliff. It's got a fence all the way around it, and it seems to have a character of its own. Yeah, it's kind of cool.
So
did you notice?
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I was going to say, did you notice all the sound effects are written in the original language that she created?
Right, yeah, she created her own language with its own alphabet, and yeah, all the sound effects are in that alphabet. In the back of the issue, she explains how to pronounce each letter, but I don't know. I'm not one to learn Klingon, so
Kaplach. Oh, I love conlangs. These constructed languages. But yeah, I'd want to make a bookmark with the key so that I wouldn't have to flip back and forth.
Yeah, reading it in PDF like this, it's a real pain to be flipping back and forth. I'd want to get the paper book.
Yeah. What is good is she does, at least in the second book, when there's some dialogue in that language. At the end of this one, near the end, there's some dialogue in that language. She puts a glossary in the back.
Yeah, in the first volume, we have this character Ragna, this kind of sexy babe warrior, and on the comic pages, there's no translation. But if you go to the back of the book, there's a translation of her lines. In the second volume, when she meets the group, then there are kind of like subtitles. It's a little easier to deal with. I would say she's more like a druid or a ranger, but I mean, no, not really ranger. She's more of a druid. I mean, she uses magic and she dresses in green, so I'm getting very strong D&D vibes, except for the monsters are completely original in how they look. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in these two volumes, it's we're getting the group together here, getting the band together. We've got 4 of them now. I don't know if anybody else is coming, but Casimir didn't want Yomi tagging along with them.
Did you say 4? Did you say 4? How dare you forget the cat?
Oh, the cat, right. What do they call him? The Frost?
Nina.
Her, right. Frost. What's the name of this animal?
I don't know. Snow Kitty. I forgot. The people who waylay them mention it, I think. I think the first one does what it needs to do. It gets you right in the action from the beginning. It doesn't give you a lot of answers. You have lots of questions. You get a peek at the world. It's not complete mystery. But the second one really takes the world building and the character building to the next level. Like one issue has just so much packed into it.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot remember the name of that.
I'm trying to find
snow leopard type.
I'm trying to find it.
It's like a big furry, snow leopard kind of character.
Frostfang,
a cutie. I love me some big cats in my stories. And so I'm an instant fan of Nina.
A few little minor things that bothered me. So in the second issue, Yomi sees a girl who's being beaten by a man, and we have alternating panels of the beating and Yomi watching, and the panels of the beating are entirely in shades of red. And that made me feel like they were flashback, but they're not.
That was a little bit confusing.
That solid color, it's been used to mean flashback in other comics. So, it was a little confusing.
I couldn't. That scene for me was because it looked like there was some flashback there as well. But you know what? I'm not sure. Again, I guess it wasn't flashback. It's not. It's just
none of it's
violence.
Flashback. I don't think.
Just the violence of somebody getting their horns chopped off.
Yeah, I don't quite understand. I think there's an explanation of it in here somewhere. But there's a baby with horns, and this guy is going to cut off the horns, and Yomi thinks that the baby's too young for that, and she ends up grabbing the baby and trying to run away with him or her.
And then we find out that she had a baby. Seems quite young. Yeah, that part was a little bit confusing to me.
Yeah. The other thing that bugged me a little bit, so it has like our world's swear words. Which kept kind of taking me out of it because it made it feel too much like somehow our world had intruded into this world. And I suppose has more impact to use our own curse words rather than make up some like you might see in, I don't know, Star Wars or something.
Battlestar Galactica, Frack, and Felger Carb.
Okay. But I don't know. I kind of felt like it needed the world needed its own swear words.
This is something that I think most creators come up against. Is like because I see a lot of like fantasy stuff where they just talk like modern day, and it did bug me at first because it's not how it used to be done in the old days, but it seems to be such a common thing. I think like the Dungeons and Dragons movie is an example, where they just talk like modern day talk, and I think we have to look at like who it's for, and the audiences are just different, and maybe they what they accept and what's okay is probably different from what was okay for us. Right.
I mean, we grew up with like Thor speak, and now Thor doesn't even use Thor speak. I don't think. The Stan Lee flowery language that was in the narration of virtually all Marvel comics in the 60s and 70s, and probably 80s.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of the 80s were trying to get away from that kind of thing.
Yeah, certainly by the 90s it was gone, but
yeah, I mean, it didn't bother me as much just because once I've already placed myself in that mode where I recognized it as a current trope of fantasy comics. It's like I liken this kind of thing to people who can enjoy kung fu movies without going, you can't jump like that. Like, okay, you're not ready for this. You need to
suspension of disbelief.
You go watch some CG thing. You're not ready for 1970s kung fu action. It takes, you have to accept certain parameters, and I think, that's one of the things that I'm okay with. I thought, like, again, I don't think necessarily that level of swearing is 100% needed. Like I said, I think this could totally be an all ages book if it wanted to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it wouldn't take very much adjustment.
Yeah, and and I like the characters, and so I think it'd be cool if it had a wider audience for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, overall, I think we really like this. Just a few little things that bug old men like us. So,
yeah, I mean, there's sometimes when new terms are introduced, I kind of want the Stan Lee little editor's box in there. They are explained. Like if you give, if you're patient, it's either in the back matter or it's in like the second issue. Some things are explained, like about the different races and such. Mm-hmm. But at first you're like, oh wow, I have a lot of vocabulary to remember, that's also like a fantasy kind of thing that you end up having to deal with. But yeah, overall, like I really like. I mean, I think the art is really good. I think except for the problematic scene that we mentioned,
with the red, yeah.
Yes, I think other than that, I think mostly the action is really easy to follow, and the layouts are really easy to follow, mm-hmm. which I am really picky about. Like if it's hard for me to read like what's going on, then
it's tough to read the comic if you can't understand what's going on in the art.
Yeah, I get ornery if I'm like, which panel do I go to next?
Yeah, reading order of word balloons sometimes is a problem, but yeah, not in this.
Yeah, I think there was one panel where I thought maybe the order of the balloons was a little bit because it was like the tail went from left to right, so that was telling us left to right, but the height of the balloons was like telling my eye to go right to left. I think that happened once near early in the first issue, but other than that, yeah, no problem.
Yeah. Find out more about Fiendish at fiendishcomic.com. Coming up, my mini review of Safer Places by Kit Anderson. First, just a reminder that you can help this podcast by making your Amazon purchases via deconstructingcomics.com/Amazon and make that your bookmark for future purchases. Deconstructing Comics earns a bit of money from your purchase that helps us keep the show going. We really appreciate your support.
Hey there, Bat fans. It's JB in New Orleans, your host of Bat 77, the 70s Batman podcast. I am a child of the 1970s and a lifelong Batman fan. And each month, I summarize and review a randomly picked Batman comic story published in the 1970s. From the pages of Detective Comics, Batman, The Brave and the Bold, and World's Finest. I also read from the letters pages and highlight all the memorable ads from the comics. On past episodes, I have also discussed Batman's appearances on Saturday morning television and the Power Records audio adventures. You can find the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you stream or download your favorite podcasts. Or you can find me on the web at bat77podcast.libsyn.com.
Welcome back. I'm doing something I've never done before. I'm recording a review without a co-reviewer. Let's see how this goes. The book is called Safer Places by Kit Anderson, a woman from Boulder, Colorado, who lives in Zurich, Switzerland. This is another book from our friends at Avery Hill in the UK. This book has a lot of different stories in it, with different art styles and color schemes. It feels like an anthology by multiple creators, but it's all by Kit. Many of the stories have the feeling of going in and out of a dream state. And actually, there are connections between these stories. They aren't each completely self-contained. The connections are so subtle that I'm sure I've overlooked some of them. But I did notice that some characters reappear in different stories at different times in their lives. For example, in the story called Country Lane, we focus on two guys, a same-sex couple. One has light-colored hair, the other has dark curly hair and wears glasses with big round frames. Late in the book, the story The World's Biggest Ball of Twine shows us a man who appears to be an older version of the boy with glasses. He's traveling to the twine ball of the title. The story's in black and white, but with blocks of color here and there that are showing us his memories of an earlier trip there with his partner. What happened to the partner? Did he die? They just broke up? We're left to wonder. The ball of twine appears earlier in the book in a story called The Basement. The boy in that story, who also has glasses with big round frames, but light-colored hair, has a Biggest Ball of Twine t-shirt. The t-shirt reads, "I had a bale at the world's biggest ball of twine. Only in a dream is that a good pun." So there are connections between the stories, but they're subtle. And as I said, this book has a really dreamy feel all the way through. Some stories are explicitly dreams, such as The Basement. The unnamed boy in that story appears to live with an older sister, Jeannie, and a male family member has died. We don't know who, but given that there's a walker left behind by this person, perhaps it was their father. Their house has no basement, but in his dream, the boy discovers a huge basement under the house, and it's full of memories. He's led there by his cat, Cole, who is able to talk while he's in the basement. Rats in the basement eventually eat the memories there. The boy tries to stop them, but Cole says, "They aren't bad or anything, just eating what no one's using. I bet you don't even know what's gone. I mean, why shouldn't they eat it?" So I guess memories vanish when no one remembers them anymore. I think this boy may be the same character who appears in the story Wallpaper, which seems to have been inspired by the Windows logo. This boy ventures to the other side of the window on his computer screen and looks out at his desk chair. In another story with no title, a boy is swimming in a lake and sees under the water a whole suburban neighborhood in which he himself is bicycling down the street. I'm not sure what it means, but I enjoyed the dreamlike atmosphere. Several other stories in the book feature a smartphone app called Sleep Space. Characters use it not only to help them sleep, but to help them through their daily tasks. The same idea shows up in a story called Lookout Station, where no smartphone can be seen, but a ghostly, shape-changing animal tends to talk like a relaxation tape. In the story Weeds, Jane finds that she has flowers growing on her. Perhaps it's a metaphor for being LGBTQ or otherwise different from those around you. But again, it's kind of dreamlike, and even a bit humorous. There are 5 sequences spread throughout the book about a wizard who lives in a forest and helps the animals there. He doesn't talk, but we have a voiceover of 2 guys talking about the wizard and how strange he seems to them. But they don't seem to know that he's helping animals. Some people may puzzle us, but there are always things that we don't know about them. There are other stories as well, some of them deeply puzzling to me. But I find the whole book to be kind of a comics version of a relaxation tape, or app. The dreaminess of it, the serene atmosphere, it really sets a mood, even if you're baffled by it. Thanks to our patrons for supporting Deconstructing Comics and our other podcasts. To join them, go to patreon.com/deconcomics. At deconstructingcomics.com, you can connect to us on X, Facebook, or YouTube. Follow the link to shop at Amazon to support the show, and find links to subscribe to the podcast. You can comment on any episode on our site or drop us a line at mail@deconstructingcomics.com. And now you can also send us a voicemail. Find the Leave a Voicemail link on the left sidebar of our site. Are you making a comic? Send it to us and we'll do a Critiquing Comics episode about it. Our theme is by J.B. Anderson. Next week, Critiquing Comics returns. Adam and I discuss Clover and Cutlass by Toby Boyd, a kind of fantasy YA comedy. And Jason and I look at the anthology book Coiled to Strike, a collection of stories about a Wild West outlaw called Emery Graves, where the character design is set, but everything else is left up to the individual creators, including the gender of the mysterious star. So join us for discussion of these two indie works next week. Till then, this is Tim, and thanks for listening to Deconstructing Comics.